This is Alan Stewart with B&B Yacht Designs, and I'm going to show you a little bit about our new B&B sailtrack. I've got here a sample of a mast section, and on the left you can see the sailtrack that we used to ship out with our kits. And it's a stainless steel track, and it uses these stainless steel sail slides. And it works fine as long as these edges are deburred and they come sharp from the factory, and we would always have to round these over. And so we got to thinking about it, and we decided to look into having our own custom sailtrack produced, which you can see here. And some of the advantages of it are it's cheaper. We can offer this sailtrack at a lower cost than this sailtrack, and we feel it's a better product. It's 6061 T6 extruded aluminum, and it's clear anodized, and it works with these 5/8 nylon plastic sail slides, which gives you a better coefficient of friction as opposed to the stainless on stainless. Another feature of the new sailtrack is, if you look at the profile here, you can see that it's actually concave along the underside. And so we did that so that when you apply it to the mast, if it'll focus here, it will match the shape of the mast a little better. But we went to great lengths to design this shape so that it will also work on just a flat rectangular mast. If you're building your mast out of wood, for example, and you're fitting it to a flat surface, it rests on the edges of the track so that it's not going to rock or move around, whereas this track, it sort of sits on a point right at the middle, and it tends to work loose over time. This track has a nice big footprint. When you put this track down on a round tube, it automatically wants to index straight with the tube. It just snaps into place, and that makes it really easy to get it parallel on the tube, perfectly straight with the tube, that is. You'll also notice that we've pre-drilled and countersunk the holes in this track, and these are designed to work with a number 50 rivet. This is a 54, so it's a 1/2 inch rivet, and you can see the countersunk head sits below the level of the track, and that's important because we're using these nylon slides, and it requires the head of the rivet to be flush inside the track. One thing to note, which I'll show also later when we do some demonstrations of installation of the track, is a standard rivet head, a rivet gun popper that is, won't quite fit into the bottom of the track. And so one thing we have to do with this track is make a little collar. This one has been machined, but you can also use a stack of small finish nuts, flat nuts. I'll show that later in the video, but this fits over there. It's got a angle ground onto it, so it drops down into the countersink, and then when you put your rivet on, your rivet popper on now, you can see that there's no issue, and it pops that rivet. Here we have some rivets. The ones on the right here are pretty standard 3/16 stainless steel rivets. These you would use for pretty much any kind of hardware that you want to rivet to the mast. We also sometimes drill and tap some of our hardware to the masts. These are less common. These are 5/32 indicated by the 5 rivets. They're stainless steel with a countersunk head. These can be hard to find in small quantities, which is why B&B purchases them in bulk and offers them included in all of our mast kits. For all of our kits that have mast kits, we offer these. The shorter ones we use in the majority of the track, and the longer ones we use where the tube sections of the mast telescope together and there's a thicker amount of material. This longer rivet gets all the way through both sections of track, and also through the added thickness of the fiberglass wedge where the two track sections join. These rivets take a number 21 drill bit, which I have here, And B&B also purchases these in bulk, and we can offer them if you would like, if you're purchasing a mast kit, and that information will be on the website soon if it's not already. A little bit more information regarding this spacer. This one we made on a lathe here at the shop, but we know not everyone has a lathe. You can probably get something that ends up looking like this just using a drill press and a grinder. But we also were fortunate enough to have one of our builders, Peter McCrary, send us some spacers that he had machined at a machine shop, and he sent them to us, and we are happy to pass those off to other builders, sort of in a borrowing process. So if you're building a mast track, if you're building one of our masts and installing the track, ask us to send you one of these spacers, and when you're done with it, you can just drop it in an envelope back to us, and we'll pass it on to the next builder. Here's all of our sailtrack stock, and you can see the countersunk hole there, and we've got these aluminum sections manufactured custom for B&B. You can see we've got quite a few of them. They're 96 inches, and you can go on our website for current prices. Okay, here we are in the shop, and Nat started installing some of the track on a pair of Corsound 20 Mark III masts that we're working on for a customer. And first thing I want to point out is the workpiece is being held on sawhorses with these V-blocks. These are really easy to make, and they hold the mast very firmly, and you can bring them up to a comfortable working height. Okay, you can see here Nat's installing a rivet just to hold as a placeholder while he's drilling the holes in the track, and then he's taking a squeeze clamp and bringing it down to make sure the track doesn't move on him. When he's drilling these holes, he's being careful to make sure that the drill bit stays centered in the hole. And so what he'll do is he'll start the hole and then check to make sure that the divot is centered in the hole, and if it comes off a little bit from the center, he'll angle the drill ever so slightly to make sure that the hole ends up dead center in the hole in the track. Okay, the other thing we do is he's got a piece of plywood there with a hole drilled in it, and that is just to keep the drill from banging into the track when the bit finally punches through the mast. Otherwise you can scratch up the anodized track, so that just prevents the drill from damaging the track, and you can see the holes nicely centered. Here you can see where we have two mast sections joining together, and we've got a wedge of thickened epoxy glued onto the mast, which helps to fair the line for the track to ride over this discontinuity in the mast section. And this goes out about 18 to 24 inches, and it's a very shallow change in the actual line of the track, so it's almost unnoticeable once the mast is finished. But we don't want to join the track in this area because this surface is not perfectly flat, and so we just try to avoid joining the track in the wedge areas. And so you can see back here we have a joint, and this is on nice smooth bare aluminum. Okay, here's an example of where we're joining two ends of the track together. You can see we've got a small C-clamp across the joint, which ensures that the track is lined up in this direction. I can just barely feel anything just because there's a slight burr. And in the other direction, we've got it clamped very lightly to the mast just to make sure that it doesn't move around. And you can see we've already drilled these holes. And when we install the rivets finally for this track, we'll have it clamped just like this to ensure that when the rivet pulls the track to the mast, it will maintain this orientation. The other thing that we'll do when we install the track is use a very small knife to just knock off the corner inside those two ends to make sure that there won't be any burr for the sail slide to hit.